Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. This is Rabbi Kovacs on the 43rd day of the Omer. We are continuing Mishnah Yomi in the 7th Perot of Sheviit, Klal Godel, which we begun yesterday. We are on the second Mishnah in the 7th Perot. Ve'od Klal Acher Amru. And they said another general rule. You'll see this will be very similar to yesterday's Klal Godel. Kol shehu machal adam. Anything that it is food for people. Umachal behema, or food for animals. Umiminatzavim, or something used for dyeing. As we explained yesterday, a lot of different plants were used for different colors of dye. Umitkayim ba'aretz, and it lasts in the ground. Now this is the chiluk, because yesterday we saw yesterday's Klal Gadol was about items that don't remain in the ground. If you put them in the ground, they would simply rot. But here these are things that can stay in the ground, such as we're going to see bulbs, onions, and the like. The Mishnah continues, Yei shlo shviis, they do have Kedushat Sheviit, L'dam of Sheviit, and their value, if you sold them or traded them for another item, that also is Kedushat Sheviit. As we said in yesterday's Klal Gadol, that even if you traded it 3 or 4 times, the original item always has sanctity of the 7th year, and the final item or money or whatever it is that was traded for also has that Kedusha. The Mishnah says, Ein lo beer, the ein l'dam of beer. So here's the difference. It has sanctity, and what you traded for has sanctity, but because these are items that last in the ground and don't simply rot and decay and are gone, you can put them in the ground. They don't have a beer. And we explain a beer, as we've mentioned many times, is when it's no longer available in the field, you've got to get rid of it from your house, and you can't keep it. And they say, and the value also, if you traded it for something else, does not have a zman beer. Ezehu, now the Mishnah gives examples. Ikar halufa shote, the ikar, the root, the bulb of the lufa shote. Now yesterday we had the alei lufa shote, the leaves of the lufa shote. The leaves have to be eaten right away. You can't stick them in the ground and expect them to last. But the bulb of this lufa shote, the wild loof, we said a few prakim ago that the loof could be Solomon's lily, but it's some sort of plant that has an edible bulb that stays in the ground and continues to last in the ground. It also has edible leaves. The Mishnah lists more examples. Ikar hadondana, the roots of the mint. Ve'arkabanin, this is some kind of plant that goes up the palm tree and grows on the palm tree, but was also edible. Some sort of vine that twirls around the palm tree, according to the Bartnura. Ve'chol bitzin is the root of a milky blossom. Ve'habuchria is some kind of fragrant herb that they use the roots thereof. Umimin hatzovim hapua v'harichpa could be madder or dyer's weed. Yesh lahen shviis l'dmeim shviis. So these items, they have Kedusha Shemitah, whatever grew in the 7th year, and whatever you traded or sold for also has Kedusha Shemitah, but ein lahem beer v'lo l'dmeihem beer. But because they last in the ground, they don't have an obligation of beer. Now, Rabbi Meir disagrees. Rabbi Meir Omer, D'meihem mitbarin ad Rosh Hashanah. Their exchange must be consumed before Rosh Hashanah. So if you traded it for a fish, you got to eat that fish before Rosh Hashanah of the 8th year. If you sold it for something, you have to use that money to buy food and eat it before Rosh Hashanah, and eat it, of course, with Kedusha or Shemitah. Amr lo, they told Rabbi Meir, lahen and beer, these items themselves, these roots and onions and bulbs themselves, they don't have a zaman beer. Their money, their exchange certainly should not have beer. So why does Rabbi Meir require it? He says the plants themselves, they grew in the 7th year, you're not going to come to make a mistake and do business with them. But if you just traded them for another item or for money, you might come to do business with them, and that's why Rabbi Meir would require beer. But Rav says the halacha is not like Rabbi Meir. Moving on to Mishnah Gimel, Klipe Rimon Vanetz Shelo. The peels of the pomegranate and its blossom, like the flower that we see the remnants of on the bottom of the pomegranate. Klipe Egozim, walnut shells. V'gol inin is the kernel or the seed, the pit of a fruit or a nut that's still edible. Yeshlan Shviit. These things do have Kedusha Sheviit, L'dmeim Shviit. So even though these are peels or husks or seeds, they still have Kedusha Shemitah. The Tosfot Yantav here says because these items were used, they had some degree of edibility or were used for dyeing. Hatzova, the dyer. Tzabah here is the man doing the dyeing. Tzovea le'atzmo, he can take fruits and growth of the 7th year and dye items for himself. V'lo yitzba b'sachar, but not hire himself out to do business with the items in Shemitah to do dyeing for other people. This is his business, so he can't use Perot Sheviit in his commercial enterprise. Shein osin sechora beperot Sheviit. You cannot commercially utilize the fruits of the 7th year. The Mishnah adds on, v'lo b'bkorot, and also we don't do business with a bechor, a firstborn animal, which has a certain kedusha. It was given to a Kohen, and the Kohen had to bring it to the Beis HaMikdash as a carbon. If it was unblemished, if it was blemished, he could use it himself. But these are things we don't want them doing business with, because then the bechor will end up kind of as something that's bought and sold and traded, and it has kedusha, so that's very unseemly. And it could end up with a Kohen who's not entitled to it, or something like that. A non-Kohen who's not entitled to it. Below, but trumot. We also don't do business with trumot. Again, these have a degree of sanctity. We don't want to be buying, selling, trading, and we don't want them listed on the stock exchange. Lo benevelot. Vela is any animal that died without a kosher shechita. We don't do business with it. Lo betreifot, and not with a treifa, an animal that had a medical problem where it was going to die even if it received a kosher shechita. Now we'll pause there for a second because we know that in Shachtais, when they do kosher slaughter, it is permitted for them to sell the animals that are nevela or treifa to the non-kosher slaughterhouse that's next door. And that's not an issue because you're not, as we're going to see in the Mishnah, you're not going out and finding a nevela and then selling it. It's an animal you already owned, and Nebuch became a nevela. You never had a nevela in the Shachtaus. You'd rather everything was perfect. So you're allowed to sell it in that case. But the Mishnah contains a little bit shkotzim, and not for, translate creepy, crawly creatures, lo moshim. These are other like bugs and crawling, slithering items that are not kosher. Lo yeh lokeach yirakot sodeh mocher b'shuk. And now back to Shemitah, and don't go out and gather a bunch of vegetables or perot shvita and then sell them in the market. You can't do that. It's doing business with Shemitah. But if someone gathers a bunch of them and he has some extra, b'no mocher al yado, his son can sell them for him. So it doesn't look like doing business if someone else is selling the extra. Lokach la'atzmo v'hotir, he went out and got a bunch of cucumbers, whatever it is, that were Shemitah cucumbers, they were hefker, and he had extra. He didn't eat them all. Mutter l'bochan. If he intended to eat them and now he simply has extra, he's not going to eat them, they're going to go to waste, it would be allowed to sell them. So this Mishnah is a source of not doing business with the Perot Sheviit and with other similar items that have inherent sanctity. Shkoyach Rabosai.